In my hand, I have a controller box for a 20Nm direct drive servo-driven force feedback wheel. Why? Well, recently Ollie from Sim-Pli.City sent us one of their SW20 kits to review, and after a week of driving in Assetto Corsa, iRacing, R-Factor 2 and Race Room Racing experience, I have to say, it's bloody fantastic. When direct drive wheels and direct drive wheel kits started to appear on the market back in around 2012, it was very much the case that you had to be an engineer, someone good with a soldering iron, and someone prepared to order components from China, Bulgaria and Istanbul, then get all those components together and somehow work out how to get them to work. Fortunately, this is what Sim-Pli.City have really addressed, in that you can now just go to a single website, decide if you want your shoulders removed from your body with their high torque kits, or just your hands removed from your wrists with their slightly lower 20Nm torque kits. With that order, you'll receive the controller box, the motor, and all the cables necessary to get it working. On top of that, you'll also receive a 1-hour phone call with the man himself, and he will guide you through any setup problems or any queries you may or may not have. The only thing missing from the kit, which I'm told is somewhat important when it comes to sim racing, is a steering wheel. Now, you can just get any steering wheel so long it's got a 70mm PCD hole arrangement on it. Use a cheapo eBay wheel or get something a little bit more authentic. And in our case, for this review, we went and got a Tricento rim along with a sim-gear.co.uk button box. All said and done though, once you've got your steering wheel and mounted it to the shaft of your servo motor, it's simply a case of copying some files from your computer to the servo motor controller box, and from that point onwards it is plug and play, and in no real difference from any of the previous wheels we've used, like the G25, T300 and TSPC Racer. Now, enough chit chat of the setting up and all the components, let's get to the important part and the bread and butter. What is it actually like to use? The most striking aspect when driving with the SW20 force feedback wheel isn't, as you might initially think, the ridiculous torque potential and strength of forces that the wheel's capable of putting out, but it's actually the sheer fidelity of the force feedback effects that you get from this servo motor. You can literally feel every track surface detail, not just the changing camber, altitude and large bumps on the road surface. No, I mean every single detail, even road markings, even painted lines on the road are legible through the force feedback of this device. Which might sound impressive, but what's even more impressive than that is that it doesn't matter how much load you're under, you can still feel those details. So for example, say you're going up through Eau Rouge, or you're going through a high-speed sustained corner where you've already got the force feedback pushing against you, replicating that G-force feel and the actual tyre aligning effect that you get when trying to push a vehicle through a corner. You can still feel those tiny little details and the tyres undulating over the road surface through that torque and power that the wheel delivers. Now, though that is the most striking aspect, and it definitely adds a huge amount to the immersion that you get from playing a driving simulator, it's not necessarily the most important aspect of force feedback when it comes to the raw functionality of driving a simulated car. What is and what does add a huge amount of functionality and makes driving simulators a hell of a lot easier to drive is the nature of the wheel's rotational speed combined with its decisively delivered high torque. What effectively happens with the SW20 compared to the more mass market wheels is that your real world force feedback wheel is always in sync with the simulator. This means that you can effectively let the car drive itself. Now, you can do that with slower cars with the more mass market wheels, and you can sometimes set them up by fiddling with wheel rotation. But with just about any car, so long as the simulator is set up right, you can have the full 900 or even more degrees of rotation and always have the wheel be absolutely spot on with the sim. If anything, with the SW20, it actually takes more effort to drive badly or destabilize the car or unnecessarily overdrive the car. The wheel calms things down. It makes the car feel as if it actually has some mass. It makes the cars a hell of a lot safer to drive. It is worth pointing out though that it does depend on the simulator. Certain cars in certain simulators do tend to cause oscillating effects that can be somewhat problematic and cause you to then have to reduce the force feedback strength on your wheel. It will still be infinitely better than any of the mass market wheels, but you lose that raw one-to-one hyper realistic force feedback that you get from cars in specific cars in R Factor 2 and specific cars in iRacing and Assetto Corsa that just connect and feel like an utter dream to drive with the SW20. Now, it's not only the incredible force feedback where this wheel delivers, but it's actually in its utility as a basic input device for gaming. The encoder on this, the 10,000 PPR encoder, is ridiculous in terms of picking up wheel movements. For example, I can touch the wheel with my finger and have it so that the encoder picks up left and right movement, but I can't see the wheel moving. That is how high the fidelity of the rotation is with the device, and I can assure you that movement is still one-to-one with what's going on. It's not that it's bugging out. If the wheel is left still, it doesn't pick anything up, and if you move it normally left and right, you'll see that it's picking up the wheel position in a perfectly linear, spot-on fashion. Not only does this show you how precise the basic rotational detection is of the encoder, but actually shows you how little dampening, cogging, or mechanical resistance is inherent to the motor itself. The wheel is completely free-flowing and smooth when it needs to be. So much so that you can actually put dampening on the wheel through the software, either in the game or through the MOS controller, and it won't negatively impact the experience. It might actually, in occasions, make it better. In short, the input, the force feedback, and just the all-round sheer precision that you get from the SW20 is simply beyond any expectation I think most people would have before actually using one. It certainly was beyond my expectations. Now, on the software and configuration side, in terms of dialing the settings to what you might like outside of each given simulator, the SW20 at this point in time uses the open source MOS force feedback driver software. Now, this software is really quite similar to what you might find in the Thrustmaster Profile or the Logitech Profiler software, in that it gives you control over how strong your wheel is, the maximum rotation of your wheel, as well as all the effects that you might want to put on your wheel, such as dampening, general filters, inertia filter, or a friction filter. Now, crucially, this software also lets you easily save profilers, something that's typically missing from your more mass market wheels. And the ability to save profiles is particularly pertinent when it comes to high torque direct drive wheels, because you will find that each simulator and even specific cars in each simulator will often require different settings in this profiler to get the absolute most out of them. One of the nicest things with the MOS controller software though is that you can pretty much always just change it on the fly if you want to. Even if you've got your simulator running in the background, you can twiddle those dial and knobs and it will update it on the fly. And with the time I've had with this wheel so far, I've had no issues with it crashing or problems with this profiler software, despite completely abusing it. It's also worth saying that really you don't have to fiddle with all the settings. You can just set up a generic default, save that to the EEPROM, and then every time you turn your wheel on, you could go to any sim and have an absolutely fantastic time. It is of course the case that sim racers like to fiddle with their knobs, probably more than they do actually driving. So, you know, there's something there for those of you with little time and those of you with too much time. Separate to the MOS software, there's also the Granity software, which for the most part you can ignore, though it's worth noting that when you first get the wheel, Sim-Pli.City have set the voltage values at half so that when people first plug it in, they don't break their wrists. To increase the voltages to get the full 20 Newton meters out the wheel, you just have to change 2 values and then you can effectively ignore it from then on. Now of course, because the SW20 is using the Sim-Cube controller box, in the future there will likely be updates to Granity, be that the actual core Granity software, but also Granity look as if they're working on their own MOS style simulation driver software, which means that the SW20 should effectively be completely future-proof should there be future developments in the direct drive force feedback wheel world. In conclusion, from this video, it's probably pretty obvious that I think this wheel is absolutely fantastic. And what I would say is that if you do ever try one, don't try one unless you've got enough money to buy one. Because if you were to then try this and go back to a consumer belt-driven wheel, you'll probably end up falling into a severe state of depression and probably contemplate jumping out of a 5th-story window. With that in mind though, this wouldn't be much of a review unless I was to point out a couple of negatives with the wheel. And I can think of 2 really big ones. The first is the fact that whatever way you look at it, the wheel costs £839 plus whatever you decide to spend on your steering wheel and button box for that steering wheel. Now that's an incredible price when it comes to direct drive servo wheels, and I think it's actually the first direct drive wheel to actually get below £1,000 as a full kit that you can buy, and it just plugs in and it works. So that's an incredible price for what it is, but that's still £839 for a steering wheel to play computer games with, and that might be really hard to get past your partner. I would say though, you can explain to them that it's using components that could be used in a lift shaft, and obviously it's not likely to fail, because if those components were to fail, people would plummet to their untimely deaths. You also do get a 2-year warranty from Sim-Pli-City, so if anything broke, they will sort it out. So you've got good peace of mind there, and it's not likely to break. Second negative with this wheel is that it's less likely to work with some of the less hardcore simulators or racing games in the same way that a T300 or G29 or TSPC Racer might. Those wheels of course are more mass market, and so developers generally tend to target them and accommodate those wheels, so there's normally less fiddling around or just basic support out the gate with more arcadey type games. A good example would be the recent Dirt 4 game that came out, where the game does detect the wheel, but you don't get any force feedback and it just doesn't line up in the game properly. Now, I would expect these problems to also arise with other console games in the future and maybe get patched eventually over time, but just not work straight out of the gate. Now, of course, if you are spending £900+ on simulation equipment, chances are you probably are spending most of your time in one of the main core simulators, such as rFactor 2, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, Race Room Racing Experience, or some of the more classic G-motor based simulators. And from our testing, all those games work to either a basic standard in terms of direct drive basic standard, so still miles better than mass market belt driven wheels, but a basic standard, or absolutely mind-blowing religious experience standard. So you're getting this device for hardcore sim racing, and for that application it does work absolutely fantastically. So there you go. That is our introductory review video of the Sim-Pli-City SW20 20Nm force feedback wheel. Now, this review I wanted to keep to a reasonable length so people don't die of old age whilst watching it. As a result, we haven't covered every single aspect of this wheel and very specific aspects of this wheel with given simulators. So what we will be doing are follow-up videos where we delve deep into each specific simulator and even specific cars in each simulator, and talk about how well the wheel works with those simulators and specific cars. If you do want to watch those videos, I would highly recommend clicking the expand button on the video description box, where we'll paste links to those videos so you can click them and then watch them. Of course, you should indeed click the subscribe button, and not only subscribe to us on YouTube but also follow us on Twitch, where when we stream we're using this force feedback wheel, so you'll be able to actually see us drive with the wheel and see what it's like in action whilst we careen into people and then make excuses for our bad driving. But all said and done, absolutely extraordinary force feedback wheel. Completely blew me away, and that's after a year or so ago we had a go on it, and I've used the AccuForce wheel, but actually having it in my house and spending a good many hours driving it, it just gets better. The more you spend on it, the worse the addiction to sim racing gets. So all I can really say is I'm sorry if I have caused critical damage to your bank balance, but really you've only got yourself to blame for watching our YouTube channel. Those of you that have ended up buying VR headsets and now probably are wanting to get a direct drive force feedback wheel. Oh well, it's your fault, not mine. To say, don't forget to click the subscribe button. I hope this video was fun to watch. Until the next video, thanks for watching everybody, and goodbye.